Welcome back, everyone, to the Writer's Parachute, where we are guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. Today, we have with us another very special guest. We have with us a second chance romance writer. It is Cindy Kidjerus.
You got it. Right? You were almost there. Kehagiaras.
Okay, well, I was close. We'll keep trying throughout the she is an author and writer, and we're going to talk to her about her second book, The Perpetual, and a little bit about her first book, Two Princes. And then we'll get back to that in a moment. But of course, we want to invite you to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe here on the YouTube channel and at any podcast platform where you're listening to us. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Writer Parachute. That is Writer Parachute with no S. But of course, we always start the show with the topic of the week. So season 2, we've been keying in on reviews. Reviews are very important. They are critical. They are king to all authors and writers. They are how we get word out about our book. They are how we get people interested in purchasing our book. This is how we get readers to tell other people that they like our book. So we're talking about that. So we've been talking about how to get reviews, how to ask for reviews, the different kinds of reviews. And now we're going to talk about some unusual reviews that a lot of people don't understand and don't know a whole lot about. So we're going to talk about pre-release reviews or ARC reviews, advanced reader copy reviews. That's what ARC stands for. And these are kind of a different mindset. These are people that you're allowing to read your book before it's available to the public. There are different companies that will help you get ARC readers. You can ask people that follow you, that are used to your writing style, or friends or family. But I would encourage you to reach out to people who are familiar with the genre of book that you're writing in, because they're the ones that are important. They're going to give the best opinion about your book and your style of writing. I'm sorry, I'm getting glare on my glasses. So, getting worse. There we go. All right. So we want to talk a little bit about the ARC and the pre-release reviews. They're really important because they help you pre-promote your book. There are going to be the reviews that are going to come out with the book when it is eventually released. A lot of times they are listed when they're up for pre-order before the book is actually available. They also sometimes are listed in the front of the book. When you open a book and you see a list of reviews that are there in the front of the book, those are also considered ARC or pre-release reviews. So think about those. The next time you have a book that's getting ready to come out is to hold it off for just a few more weeks. See if you can get those ARC reviews to add to your book, to add to the release of your book. Now, I want to caution you, there is a difference between an ARC reader or pre-release reviewer and a recommendation. A few times we have people writing forwards or writing a recommendation for a particular book. We will talk about that on another episode, but they are different. We're specifically talking about getting people to review the book before it's available to the public. So that's just a little bit of taste of what we're talking about at this kind of reviews. If you'd like more information, please do reach out to us at thewritersparachute.com, or you can leave us a comment on any of the social media platforms or any of the places where you view or listen to the podcast. So let's go ahead and get on with our interview today. We have with us Cindy, and I'm going to try it. It's Kidjerus. Is that correct? Did I get it?
Kehagiaras, very close. Very close.
I'm getting close.
Yes.
All right. And we're going to
What happens when you marry a Greek god? You get a Greek name.
I know. It's like, and I'm from the South, which means we're constantly in tongue twister land anyways. But anyway, we're going to talk to her about her book, The Perpetual. It is the second book that she's released. It is a second chance sport romance. And I want to go ahead and have her hold up both of those books. And I'm going to let you know a little bit about Cindy. She's a storyteller first and foremost. Her writing journey began after her 50th birthday and the lockdown that provided her the opportunity to get her stories written. Some of her stories have been haunting her dreams for over 40 years. but the characters began shouting at her all hours of the day and night to write them down. I know what that feels like. Her previous lives have been in advertising, fashion, and a small business owner. She is clinically dyslexic. She was diagnosed in college and has made a life's ambition to consume novels, poetry, and articles to push past those challenges and tell her own stories. She's a proud native of California, living in Hermosa Beach, California, in a tiny beach town south of Los Angeles, with her husband of 16 years and two beautiful children and two spunky-rescue kittens. Welcome to the Writer's Parachute, Cindy. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
You're very welcome. I was kind of excited to read this book. Unfortunately, we had some crossed wires and I didn't get it in time. I read some of it. I haven't read all of it, but I am very excited by what I've read, and I'll probably consume the rest of it later this evening when I have a little more time. It's just been one of those weeks, but I am very excited about it. It is called The Perpetual. It is a second chance sports romance. And I was looking through the information on this, and I came across this interesting statistic where it was saying this is the most highlighted quote from your book. And it says, "I wanted to play him like a washboard and a jug band." And I was just like, oh, if nothing else wants to make me read this book, that quote.
Yeah. It is, I get these visuals and I want to be able to use them no matter how off color they might be.
Well, that certainly painted a picture for me. I'm just like, oh, I definitely need to read this book. So I want to know, it's a second chance sports romance, but I wanted to know why this particular topic about second chance and romance was important to you. And you say in your book listing that it's a romance book that will make you believe in second chances for love, for female friendship bonds, and untapped personal strength. The Perpetual will leave you feeling sexy at any age. And I was like, well, there's a second reason I need to read this book.
Yeah. So when I was writing it, it was, I just turned 50. Mm-hmm. But I was having this sort of, I was consuming these romance novels that had real high heat, and I was loving it. And I was loving all the heat, but all of the characters were like in their 20s or, even younger. And I was like, but we're not dead yet. Well, there's still a lot of heat.
Gas in the tank left.
There's still gas in the tank. So, I really wanted to show that that even, in your 40s and 50s, especially women, still have like that fire and that passion. And sometimes it just needs to be let out and not tamped down, not, brushed under the rug or let it out, so I want everybody to feel sexy at any age, and this is one of those things. Now, when you're writing a story about characters in their 50s, there's really only a few options you can take here, and one of them is something that we all know in this age, is that we've been divorced, or we've lost a loved, our partner, or, we've never had one, but we had a child anyway. There's quite a few scenarios. And I really love the second chance arc of a story, that you go through so many different lives. Like, I like to tell people I'm in my 5th of my 9 lives, because I'm 53, so like a cat. And so, but back in my second life, there was a lot different me, and there was a lot other boys. And I don't know where those boys are today. Some of them I do, but some of them I don't. And Shelley, the main character, she has an affair with Jason in her 20s, and he is a professional athlete. He's a surfer. And surfers have to go where the waves are. So he was traveling, and he only came to Huntington Beach, where she lived, once a year for the US World Surf Tour. And so that was the only time that she saw him for like 5 years.
Mhm.
But, as they got older in their 20s into their late 20s, she realized, hey, I need to like live my life here. This guy is never going to settle down. He belongs to the world. He doesn't belong to me. We need to move on. And so they did. And they both married other people and had kids. And he retired and moved to Brazil. But when her husband of 20 years got cancer, terminal cancer, and she lost him, to get through all of her anxiety and depression, she went to a place in her mind where she was young and fit and pretty, and the world was ahead of her. And that was where she remembered this affair that she had with the surfer. So it turned out to be a romance novel, and the world loved it, and she became a huge bestseller. And he shows up at one of her signings, and he's divorced. And all of these feelings start coming back, but he also owes a Central American gangster $8 million. And that's where the story starts.
No, wow. Well, and, I love that about that. And you're right. It's like there are, a little bit narrower arc options for you when you're talking about older people. But what I loved about the book and what I'm reading into the reviews and the behind the scenes information is that it kind of points a finger at not only second chance, but at, the decisions that we make at the time, which are right for us, don't mean the end of that story. And sometimes, that relationship needs to have its time later on, even though it seems that it needs to happen then. And it's kind of about, the choices that we make, we have to make those choices that are right for us at that time, but that doesn't mean the end of that story. And I do love that kind of thing because it happens in life. It happens a lot more often than we
it
realize.
happened in Jane Austen.
Yes.
Sense and Sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
She picked Colonel Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Marianne picked Colonel Brandon, which was the safe choice, but it was right for her at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was good. And I do love that. So I want to know what your inspiration was. I mean, you touched on a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper for that. So the inspiration for this story in and of itself and the reason for this particular title, The Perpetual.
I have to tell you that this is going to sound really bizarre, but I was in an outer body experience when I wrote this book. I don't know who these people are.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can think of is that we were in the lockdown and it was scary out there. And like my main character, my mind was looking for a place where, and I was turning 50. So that was a whole existential crisis in itself. My mind was looking for a place that I was in control of things, where the outside world was not in my control.
Right.
And I think that thinking of people that I knew and the places that I was and the place where I was at that time brought about this kind of story. And it just kind of, it had its own life. It just kept going and going. And, I was a new writer, and I didn't know what the rules were for contemporary romance. And so, could I go back and forth in time periods? Could I completely change the direction of the story, almost in the middle? Could you think it's one story and then change to a whole other story? Can you do that? And that was like, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And people just seem to really like that, because it starts out as like this sweet second chance romance, but it turns into something completely different.
Well, I think, serendipitous things are the most exciting because they are outside the box. They are unexpected. And what I say is there really are no rules to writing. There's only guide rails. And if you choose to jump over one, that's fine. Just have a good reason for it.
Yeah, that was my whole thing was, and I'm an avid reader because I forced myself to read, because I was dyslexic, and that was the only way that I could really, push through it, was to consume the written word and
Mhm,
retrain my brain to actually understand what I was reading. And
mhm,
so I read spy novels and mysteries and thrillers,
mhm.
and everything in a thriller or a mystery has to have a purpose.
Right.
But my editor told me, well, it does in romance too. It does in every story.
Mhm.
Every chapter has to have a purpose,
Sure.
or else there's no reason for it to be there.
Right.
So, there are some rules,
Mhm,
and that was one of the rules. And so, with the mystery and thriller and
mhm,
spy novel background, you don't have to know who the bad guys are, but there's got to
mhm.
be a reason why you introduce this character.
Right. Well, and and again, what I will say is there are mostly guide rails and stuff like that. Yes, you need to have a reason to introduce the character, but there are reasons, multiple reasons. Is it moving the story forward? Is it giving
That's
you a
that too.
background or
Yeah.
information about another character? Is it giving you information that you need to know rather than just doing an information dump? Or is it a red herring, which are also required because you want to sometimes send the reader or the characters in the wrong direction. And again, that's moving the story forward because that adds to the depth of the story. So why the perpetual?
Because he kept coming back into her life. So at first,
Mhm,
he came every year for 5 years.
mhm,
And so it was, that. And when she realized what was happening, and that she was letting him in, and that she was falling more and more in love with him, and it was going nowhere, and it was just this perpetual spin,
mhm.
but then he also came back 25 years later. So there was a perpetual for that too, because it came full circle.
Right. Which brings an interesting trope that you're using in the book that I had never seen before, and I absolutely loved it. We talked about this in the green room, is that you have the main male character having this affinity for interesting and uncommon words. And of course, your main character is a writer, which, we are all wordsmiths. We love words, especially throwing out complicated words that mean multiple things and all of that. So I thought this was interesting. So can you tell me why you wanted to throw that in there? Because
Well, it was
I was
supposed
kind
to
of
be.
dumbfounded thinking, why hasn't anybody used this before?
Well, first of all, it was supposed to be sexy, like
Well, it
really
is.
sexy.
It is.
Like, he found words sexy, and he found that she used big words sexy, and he wanted her to say big words because it turned him on, and so they have this little game that they play, and they're she's an attorney who became a romance writer. So she even has the Latin words, and she has all of these really big words that she uses. And, instead of him being just some dumb surfer,
Mhm.
he like consumes these words and wants to use them and expand his brain, and that turns her on. So, the two of them are turning each other on by using these big words, and it's
Right.
uh it's a really hot scene.
Yeah, it is. It's very hot, and it's like, I'm going to label it as brain sex. It was great.
Totally. Or word sex, yeah.
It was great. So,
Or word play.
yes, yes, I love that. So, what would you like readers to take away from this book, The Perpetual?
It's not a romance thing that I want them to take away from this. What I want them to take away from it is, whatever age you are, and I'm mostly speaking about women that are our age, that you have to be able to find your own sexiness. And sexiness doesn't have to mean sex appeal. It could mean anything. It could be, just being able to walk into a room and say, I'm here.
Yes,
I mean, that's
amazing.
sexy. But I just know that in this Gen X generation, we're not going to be quiet, and we're not going to sit on the porch knitting, and we're not going to do the things that grandmothers do. We're different. And I don't know if other generations are going to follow in those footsteps. Frankly, as a Gen X person, I don't care. But what I love is that you can still have the confidence in yourself to be sexy, to, like I did, completely change careers to something that I would have never thought that I'd be able to do when I was graduating from high school, or graduating from college, or in my first career, or even in my second career, or even in my third career. This never would have been something that I would have thought that I'd ever do. And now that I'm in my 5th of my 9 lives, and I say that like a cat,
right?
I think that this is where I want to be able to convey to the world, to the romance community, and to anybody who will listen, that we are not dead yet. And that that women in their 40s and 50s still have that kind of appeal and drive and passion to start over, to do something new, and to have romances.
Absolutely.
And now I'm going to write a whole bunch of books with characters in their 40s and 50s, because I want that to be a big deal.
Well, and I agree with you, and I'll probably be one of your big fans for this, because you're right. It's a very untapped market, and I was in the same shoes when I was in my 50s. It's like I had written my entire life, but I never thought to publish anything. And so when I published my first children's book in my 50s, I was a little hesitant, but I got the best reaction from my oldest grandson. He's like, he goes, he goes, I know I'm not even 20 yet. He goes, but I kind of given up on my dreams, because I just figured if I hadn't started making them happen now, they were never going to happen. He goes, but then I look at you in your 50s, and you finally published a book. You've been writing all these years, and it finally happened for you. And
I say that to my kids. I say, what? I'm just going to be the example. I'm just going to do what I'm doing and have them see me living and doing what I want to do. And hopefully that'll be an example to them.
Well, yeah, for him, he was just going, I now hold on to my dreams. He goes, now I know they're not dead. They're just not ready yet.
Absolutely.
And I mean, for me, even if I never sold another book, if I never sold any books, it's like that was worth everything that I went through to get there.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so I keep writing, mostly just to show people you can. It's like, as you said, you can have multiple careers and you still have, and I'm much older than you. It's like I'm a baby boomer. So for me to to do this, it's just it is fun, and we still have a lot to say. We're not ready to, as you said, sit on the porch and knit. It's
true.
My grandmother did that. I don't feel like doing it.
Nope.
All right.
Nope, that just isn't us.
All right. So I want to know, if you could go back to the very beginning when you were first starting to write and publish your book, what do you wish you had known, or that somebody had told you?
I wish I would have known how supportive this community is. Coming from advertising, which is very cutthroat, and the newspaper industry, which was very cutthroat and very male oriented. This was such a breath of fresh air, that there were so many people willing to help me and give me advice and point me in the right direction and give me recommendations and say, hey, I'll read it you know, I want to see where you're going with this. And, I joined Twitter, which I thought was just, everybody, politically pooping on each other. And, but what I found this really, really strong, author community and publishers, and they did these pitch contests where you do 180 characters for your pitch, and different mentors read the pitches and say, oh, hey, I want to know about that and want to read your book. I didn't have anything edited. I didn't know what I was doing, but coming from advertising, I knew how to do a pitch.
There you go. Yes.
So I pitched my stories, and I just threw it all out there. I had these 2 stories. Neither one of them had been edited. Neither one of them had ever been looked at by anybody who knew what they were doing. And I put them both out there on a pitch contest. And one author who was just hired by a brand new publishing company wanted to read 2 princes, and another author who was part of the pitch contest mentors wanted to read 2 princes. Another one wanted to read The Perpetual. So I got a mentor for both. One of the 2 princes author happened to have just gone on board with a very small brand new publisher, and they signed me as the 3rd author that they've ever signed with my debut book. And then The Perpetual, another small publishing company, also saw my pitches, wanted to read it, and the editor from that publishing company fell in love with it. So before I knew it, I was in edits for 2 books, having never written anything before, having never done any of this before. But the support of these authors were so amazing, and they just mentored me. And so many others. Oh my God, I love your pitch. I love this story. I love your aesthetics. Blah, 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 blah. And, what do you think about this? And, oh, you should join this, and you should, be part of that. And here's this, and be a part of this with me. And I mean, it was so opening and welcoming that by May, I had my first book out, 2 Princes, which is 90s Secret Royals. And then by September, The Perpetual came out, which is the one we've been talking about. So now I have 2 books out there in the world, and I don't know what I would have done without the writing community.
Right. And that is great. And the writing community on Twitter is vast. And so the trick to Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, is to follow hashtags. And what she's talking about is the hashtag for pitch or pitch fest. They have those all the time, and you have literary agents, you have small press publishers, you have editors and other authors that go in on this pitch fest that she's talking about. And it is the 180 character where you're just giving a short, brief pitch line to get some interest and get you in the foot in the door. So I would encourage anybody to go check it out.
Absolutely.
But they also are starting to do those a little bit on Instagram, and I've seen some of it being picked up on TikTok and stuff like that. Not so much on Facebook, although there are literary agents on Facebook too. So I mean, this is a perfect example of why we encourage authors to go on these social media, because it is not just about getting fans; it's also about getting support and getting to the people that you need, and it's about using them as tools, and advertising, how valuable they are as free
Networking,
marketing,
community.
networking tools. So yes, we encourage everybody to do that. So having said that, what do you think readers are going to think of your book, The Perpetual, in 10 to 20 years?
I think it's still going to be relevant. One of my inspirations was the movie Romancing the Stone.
Yeah.
And you can watch Romancing the Stone today and it'll still be relevant because it's so fun. And it's not there. I mean, yes, the fashion and the hair. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty 80s. But the story itself is still funny. It's still swoony, and it's still like so much fun. And that's what I think the perpetual is going to be as well. Because I think that if you have something that is just fun, and it's not meant to be this literary triumph, and it's not meant to make you cry, and it's not meant to, do anything to change your life, except for maybe give you confidence as you get older. That's the only thing that I want to convey, if there's any kind of social message here. But other than that, you can sit on the beach and read it, and then look up and see the surfers and be like, yeah, surfers.
I love it. And that actually is a very valid point. It's like not every book has to be, literary fiction. It just needs to entertain. And as I tell people, the number one thing you need to think about when writing a book is telling a good story, because everything else is just window dressing.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So, what obstacles or challenges have you had in trying to get your writing and publishing of this book done?
So we touched on it a little bit, that I am clinically dyslexic. That when I don't see words and sentence structure like everybody else does. I get in my zone and I just write. And I don't pay attention to the sentence structure or the punctuation or splashy first, draft is supposed to be. But I'm a little bit more slow on the uptick when it comes to getting it out to the editors being polished. And I do get some frustration from my editors because I am slow on the learning of the polishing. So now I'm in the edits of my third book. And, I explained to the editor before she started working with me that I am going to be slower when it comes to understanding the structure of sentences and punctuation and grammar. It's not always going to get me right away. Right. Even if you tell me that it's wrong, I still might not know how to fix it.
Right.
So, but it'll take me a little bit, but as long as there's patience, it's a challenge more. It's a challenge for me, but I think it's more a challenge for my editor.
Well, and I understand that from an editor standpoint. And what I will tell people in general, the biggest thing that is helpful to most authors and writers to understand is there is a certain rhythm to stories and storytelling. And it's really hard to explain it, but your mind knows it, especially if you're a reader. So what I tell people is read their manuscript out loud, because your ears will hear things your eyes will never see. They'll never notice that you've got too many long sentences together until you try to read it out loud. They won't notice the stumbling words in how you arrange the sentence until you read it out loud. And then if you're stumbling trying to say it and you're the writer, then obviously your reader's going to have a hard time and stumble across it trying to read it. So it's a good tactic. I mean, it's not perfect. And, and editors, they need to be a little more flexible. It's not everybody has an MFA education in how to write the perfect book. So, it is, as long as you're honest and upfront with your editor, I think you should be great. But yeah, it is a challenge, and it's a challenge that a lot of new authors deal with, is finding the right editor and understanding all the building blocks. And as I said, the rules and the guide rails and stuff like that. It's the mechanics. And again, if you're telling a great story, it's just window dressing. And if you got to change the curtains a couple of times, who cares?
I like that. Cool.
All right. So what advice would you give to other authors and writers?
Just write it. Just don't think about how it's going to sound. Don't think about where it's going to end up. Don't think about who you're writing for.
Mm-hmm.
Just, or where it's going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, yes, the tropes are great and everything, but do they really matter? I mean, you just got to write what that the voices in your head are telling you to write.
Mm-hmm.
And just do it. And yes, the first draft is supposed to be bonkers and all over the place and not pretty, and but it's like, it's the first time you've ever done makeup,
right,
when you're 5 years old, and
mm-hmm.
you've got like, the eyebrow up here and you've got the lipstick over there, and I mean, that's it's your first time. It's the first time, and it could be the 25th book
Mm-hmm.
that you write, but it's still, you just have to sit down and write.
Yes.
And when you get stuck, you listen. I personally, when I get stuck on a character, because I like my characters to have many layers.
Mm-hmm.
I love my onion characters so much, and I try to find a theme song for my characters.
Right.
Something that I can listen to over and over and over again and remind me who that person is in their essence.
Right.
And I love music, and music has been my muse for a lot of these characters. And I want them all to be very layered and very complex. And I want them to do things that don't make sense to even them, and just get themselves in trouble and then get themselves out of it, or, whatever. I want them to be like these crazy, don't know what I'm doing people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, bringing it all back together, where it's the help of a friend or a lover or a parent or a sister or a brother or whoever, or themselves,
mm-hmm.
with just a realization, a light bulb. But yeah, music, when you get stuck,
right,
is a good one for me.
Right. And I want to jump back to what you said in the beginning about just writing. And as a writing coach, I hear this a lot, where people are trying to do too many things at once. They're trying to do too many layers of the writing process. They're trying to skip all of the extra drafts that you have to go through. Generally, a book needs to go through at least 4 or 5 drafts before you even think about sending it off to an editor.
20 or 30.
I think about, what I like to use as the analogy is, you need to build the skeleton before you put some skin on it, before you put some clothes on, and before you do the hair and makeup. So you kind of have to do it in layers. You can't pick what barrette you're going to put in their hair until you put the skin,
so they have hair,
body, or you have a body to put it on. So
right,
and I encourage people to sometimes, I mean, again, you have to do what's best for you, but I encourage a lot of new writers to try writing by hand, because a lot of times the technology kind of gets in our way, because it's constantly saying, oh, this word is misspelled, you missed a period here, or that it isn't capitalized, or this doesn't make it, this isn't grammatically correct. I mean, obviously you can turn all those things off, but a lot of times when you're just handwriting, you don't care. And you don't care if it's just scribbled and it isn't fully developed. And, I talk about this when people are doing research. Sometimes they end up going down that big rabbit hole and they end up with so much research that they're never going to possibly. And I'm like, write the story first. Write the story first, then you're going to know what research you need to do, because, that's taking away from the time. And as we said, at the core of every book is a good story. So tell the story, and then you can sit there and play with it and figure out what tropes and what, tricks and things you want to use to make it a better story. But if you don't start with a good story, I don't care how many tropes or arcs or whatever you use, or you can have the greatest characters in the world, but if it's not a good story, nobody's going to read it.
It's true.
So
it's true. I think it was Jodi Picoult who said, you can't edit a blank page.
You're right. You can't do anything with a blank page. You can't make it, well, you can make it better, but you can't edit it. And if there's no story there, there's not much you can do to it. So I want to know, what keeps you motivated?
The voices in my head. after the perpetual, I'm like, well, if that's all I write, for the rest of my life, then that's fine. And, the edits took so long that I don't know if I'll ever want to do this again. But then the voices started again. And they're like, well, this character from the perpetual wants to tell their story. And here's the story, Cindy. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to shut up until you write it. Okay, so now I'm going to be done. Another story. They're like, this. I don't think I have a choice at this point.
No, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like my characters won't let me sleep.
They won't let me sleep. They're just all over me. And yeah, I don't have a choice anymore. But I am getting better at it to where the thought process is getting better. Because I'm what you would call a pantser. I write from the seat of my pants. The story just like does what it does.
We call those creators versus crafters.
Yeah.
It's a little better than the pantsers. Like, well, creators, we just create as we go.
I'm learning all of this still. I've only been a published author for a year. So, but this next one, I actually, I haven't finished. So I'm editing the sequel to the perpetual right now. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even finished the third one, but the fourth one already started talking to me. So, this is the first time that I've actually started, writing down, wait, there's more. Hold on. Yeah, it just keeps going and going and going and going. And so I might plot.
There you go.
You
might want to think about checking out the program Scrivener, because it does have.
I've got Scrivener. Scrivener and I have a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I understand. I have those too, and it's just, I have boxes and boxes of with rubber band lists of note cards. That's this story. It's this story. It's this story. And it's like people are like, "Don't you ever run out of ideas?" I'm like, "No."
I wish, one of these days. But you know what? Here's what it is that like a musician, you hope the music never stops.
Right. Well, I'm not too worried about that, but it's like, and there's ways to get around that. So here on the Writer's Parachute in season 2, we've been focusing on reviews. So I would like for you to give us a review of your book, The Perpetual.
Okay. Yeah, I actually, what's funny is I did write the very first Goodreads review of The Perpetual on Goodreads. So I wrote, if you love Romancing the Stone and you prefer characters over 40, then this is the story for you, with a sexy silver fox and a whole lot of fun. 5 stars.
All right. Awesome. And the part of the reason that we're doing that here on the Writer's Parachute is because we're focusing on reviews, but I want the audience to hear and listen and understand how easy it is to write a review. I'm putting these authors on the spot to review their own book. If they can get by, their own perspective and their own investment in a book to write a good review, as you just heard, and they can be that simple or that complicated, we know you can do it, and we encourage everybody to go review books. Even if you're an author and writer, this is a good way to get your name out there, to be known for good reviews and for recommendations of books, and to get them looking in your direction, and then therefore they'll look at your books too. So we want to focus on that, and reviews are absolutely key to all authors and writers. So we sort of touched on this a little bit. So what is coming up next?
So the Perpetual, he is a professional surfer, and he is sponsored by a made-up surf company in Huntington Beach, California, which is also dubbed Surf City, USA. And they have the US Open of Surfing every year, and it is, I guess it's the United States hub of surfing. is Huntington Beach, California. And that is where this surf company is based. At the end of the perpetual, the main character, Shelley's brother, is a out of work tattooed ex-con who Jason, the main character and the surfer we're talking about, hires as his assistant, like in an old 80s sitcom. So he has to like be his butler and, you know, has to run his errands and all that kind of stuff to launder his karma. Ben has to launder his karma because he is in big trouble. Jason bails him out, makes him be his assistant, like in an old 80s sitcom where he has to be his butler and run his errands and do all of these kinds of things for him. They go and see his old sponsor, Tenant Surf Company, which is where the second book comes in. The second book comes in surrounding Tenant Surf Company, and it's based in Huntington. It's exactly what you think it is. It's graphic t-shirts and shorts and bathing suits, and it is surfboards and skateboards, and it was legendary once upon a time and has completely taken a nosedive. It is in debt. It is suffering. It is going to go out of business. No. And the only one that can save it is the founder's daughter, who has had it with everybody. She's a big, huge grump. She is just hates everybody and everything, and just all she wants to do is just save this company, and everybody just better get out of her way. And she does not need a hot, tattooed ex-con especially getting in her way. So that is where the Dasher starts.
So it's called the
Dasher.
The Dasher. All right. Yes. Do we have any idea when the Dasher is going to be coming out?
We are gunning for December. So it's on the calendar for sometime in December.
All right. Well, of course, we want to have you back when that is out and available so we can talk to you about that. So I know that your books are available on Amazon. Are they available on any other platforms?
They are on Barnes & Noble Nook and in Barnes & Noble store, one Barnes & Noble store. That's a really great topic for you one of these days if you want to. Barnes & Noble is bringing back the buying power to their managers. And you can do a consignment program at your local Barnes & Noble.
Right.
With the manager. So I got the perpetual into my local Barnes & Noble, my two local Barnes & Nobles. So they're available there. They're available on their online stores as well. So yes, so Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Nook, and Kobo, and iBooks. And
so basically wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold.
All right. Well, we love to hear that. So yes. I know you're on social media. You mentioned Twitter. Or are you in any other social media platforms?
I'm on all of them. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere, okay. Donna. I'm
all
on
right. Well,
Instagram.
don't run
I'm
out
on Facebook.
Don't run out and grab a pen or paper, because we will list all of the links to her books on our show notes. We'll also list the links to her social media accounts. So do you have any upcoming events or anything else you'd like to share with us before we go do our tip of the week?
Yeah, I'm just excited about this sequel coming out. It's just really exciting, and I'm putting all my focus on that right now.
All right, awesome. We're so glad to have you here, but let's go ahead and jump over and do our tip of the week. As Cindy mentioned, she is dyslexic, and she struggled with some of the writing mechanics in the guidelines or guide rails or rules or whatever you want to call them, and she was very frustrated. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. We talked a little bit when she was talking about some of these tips that you can use to help you through that. And that is to read out loud. Ask some of your writer friends to read through your stuff. They understand. They understand it's unpublished stuff. That will keep it quiet. If you're concerned about that, you can always employ an NDA Also, most writing programs have the ability for you to watermark your pages so they can't be copied or published in any way if you're concerned about that. But what I want to talk about is this frustration. And what I have to say is part of the frustration is finding the right editing or the right team to help you with your book. I know it takes a little extra time, and I know when we get to the end of the book, people are in a rush to get it done, to get it out, to get it published. And that's great, but it's one of those moments when you really do want to take your time. You do want to really find that great team member to help you, because as what Cindy experiences is a lot of frustration in trying to get through that process, because I don't believe she had maybe the right editor that handled her in the way that she needed to. Not every editor is right for every writer or is right for every book for that same writer. You need to get samples. So when you're looking for an editor, at least look for 5 or 6 editors, get some writing sample or get some samples from them on how they're going to edit. A lot of them will ask for a first chapter, first 10 pages or something like that, so that you can see how they're responding to your work, to see if it works for you, if they're being overly critical, or if they're being too easy, or if they're trying to rewrite or change your voice or something like that, or if they're just not gelling well with you. You need to have that cohesive team member feel when you're going through the editing process, because at the end of the day, this is your book. It is representing you, not your editor, not your publisher, not anybody that's giving you advice, not a beta reader. It is your book. You are the public face and the public figure for that book. So it needs to work for you. So again, I'm going to go back and tell you to try and maybe avoid this frustration. I know for her, it was a little more complicated because of dyslexia, but we all have issues that we have to overcome when it gets through that. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of imposter syndrome and stuff that goes into that. But again, do yourself a favor, find that team member that's going to work for you and make sure that it is what you need, because there's thousands and thousands, probably millions of editors out there. Trust me, take your time. You're going to find the one that works best for you. Cindy mentioned that she has, and when we're talking in the green room, that she's had now her 3rd editor, and she thinks she's got a great one, and I'm glad to hear that. But it is a process, so do yourself that favor, take your time, find that right editor, get that. And if you are working with an editor and you are feeling uncomfortable, please voice that back to the editor. They are there to help you. Their job is to make you sound great, to make your book sound great, but they can't do that if you guys are butting heads. So do reach out to your editors, let them know you're the face. It needs to work for you. So I'm going to get off my soapbox a little bit now and get back to saying goodbye to Cindy. We're so glad that you're here on the Writer's
Thank you so
Parachute.
much.
You're very welcome. And as always, I am so grateful to be the host here on the Writer's Parachute, guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. And we hope for all of you that this is a safe place to be creative and for all of your dreams to land well. Until next time, bye.